My sense is Mike had some leverage here. Whatever Jerry was talking about, Mike McCarthy, who I was part of hiring 18 years ago, geez, that's a long time, decided, no, I got better options.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a simulcast between the Ross Tucker Football Podcast on a Tuckheads Tuesday and the Business of Sports Podcast with, you guessed it, former longtime NFL executive, and people forget, agent as well, my guy Andrew Brandt, who you should all check out on social media like I do, at Andrew Brandt. I'm, of course, at Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. That's where we post all the shows as soon as they're ready. And you can also check out my shows if you like the video portion, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. So Andrew and I like to do this every couple months, A, because we like each other and we like talking to each other, but also we like to get some perspective from someone who is on the other side. You know, I'm a hardworking player that does everything right. Andrew is a greedy executive that tries to pay me as little as possible, no matter how hard I work, no matter me doing all the right things. His job is to pay us as little as we possibly can. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But Andrew, great to talk with you. I love being on the Business of Sports podcast because I know how successful it is and how many people love your show. It's funny because one thing we can talk about before we get into the Deshaun Watson and Vrabel and Mike McCarthy and the Cowboys and all that stuff is just how different this time of year is for you versus me in our former jobs. Mm-hmm. As soon as the season's over for a player, don't get me wrong, Andrew, we want to make the playoffs. You want to have a chance at the Super Bowl. But I got to be honest with you, the second best thing to making the playoffs is not making the playoffs. And the season's over and you get to go home for months and do whatever you want, whenever you want. Whereas for you, it's like go time.
All my jobs, Ross. Great to be with you. This is always a treat when we do it together. I hear from your show fans, my show fans. Hopefully it's one big boat. But as an agent, as a team executive now, as a business analyst on this stuff, it starts now for me. And opposite, counterculture, counterintuitive. Like during the season, it's kind of slow in those jobs. And after the season, it really picks up. What's interesting is last week, it was 18 teams in that position you're talking about off to wherever they're going to go for the next 4 months. This week, another 6 teams, including my Packers. And it's just like goodbye. And you know this, but people don't realize this, the finality of it all. Like players would be packing their lockers, boxes, etc. on the Monday after the last game. And by noon, the place is empty. At Lambeau, we went from a hustling, bustling Lambeau Field to by noon that day, empty, like quiet. And I felt like a camp counselor standing at the door, Ross, saying goodbye to everyone. Hope you have a good off season. And I'll never forget, I think Al Harris was one of these guys, Donald Driver, like, Andrew, do you have to stay here? I'm like, yeah, it's my job. I got to stay. I'm not going to California or Texas or Florida where all these guys are coming from. But the finality of it, and even watching, it just hits so hard. It's like, as I said, 6 months in and then it's over and everyone's off. And now the CBA mandates you can't even come back for like 3.5 months. So they'll see you in April. It's gone. And a lot of these guys will never be back, as you know.
The two things that really are funny to me about it, number one, imagine spending essentially every single day, because even the off day on Tuesday, you're in there watching film or working out or hot tub, cold tub, those type of things. Imagine spending essentially every day with a group of people for 6 straight months every day. Yeah. And then, boom, you're gone, and you don't see him again for 4 months, and a lot of them you don't ever see again. It's just over. It's a great point. But I don't know if I ever told you this. Nobody told me that my rookie year. So like I went into to work out the next day and it was a ghost. I was the only person in there. Nobody told me that like once the season's over, everybody leaves. I thought it was like college, like I had an apartment in Virginia. I thought, okay, I'm just going to keep working out here. I'm not going to pay to go. Guys literally pay to like go to Gold's Gym or other gyms. I thought it was always the dumbest thing I'd ever seen. Why would you pay to work out when you have this incredible facility? I did want to also ask you, Andrew, before we get into some of this off the field news, just your observations on maybe the playoff teams in general or the playoff games. Did you notice any themes from your end on the business side, any commonalities among the teams that are playing this time of year?
Well, I've talked about this all year. I'm sure you have as well. The resurrection of the older but not too old running back who was discarded. The five players that just stick out like sore thumbs. Of course, Derrick Henry, of course, Saquon, of course, Josh Jacobs and Joe Mixon. And they're four of the best players in the playoffs. I know the Packers lost, but Jacobs was, I thought, the best player on the field for part of that game. That just really, because the inefficiency, or I guess you would say efficiency now of signing running backs like that for $10 to $12 million is off the charts when compared to receivers making 25, 30, in case of Lamb and Jefferson, $33 million. So you're getting Saquon or Mixon or Henry or Jacobs for literally a third that you can get a Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb. So that really stuck out at me. And then, of course, Ross, I think the quarterbacks, the most valuable asset in the history of football is a productive quarterback, not only in their rookie contract, but in their rookie year. So watching Daniels last night, and as you know, I grew up a hardcore fan of that team growing up in D.C., it's just astounded me. He's going to be on that contract 3 years, no matter what, before they can redo it. And he's getting paid whatever, a few $1,000,000 compared to his peers making $50 million. The value of these quarterbacks at that young age is just extraordinary.
All very well said. I would say the things that jumped out to me are, for the most part, these teams are homegrown.
Yeah.
And they've drafted very well. Like the Packers, for their whole offensive line to be guys they drafted not in the first round. If you go across the board, they're all second, third, fourth, fifth round picks. That's super impressive. The same thing, by the way, with their receiving core. That is really hard to do. Actually, for the first time, when I did the Packers-Lions earlier this season, on a Thursday night, I met Brian Gutekunst for the first time, and I brought up your name, Andrew, and I mentioned just how impressive that was. The Eagles, other than Mekhi Becton, their offensive line is all homegrown. Their defensive line is primarily homegrown. You think about like the Houston Texans with Kamari Lassiter and Stingley at corner. I mean, it's not a coincidence, right? These teams have drafted well at important positions. But then also, they've all done a nice job with their free agent additions. You mentioned Joe Mixon earlier.
Yeah.
You can think about Danielle Hunter for the Texans. For the Packers, Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney, home runs. I mean, absolute home runs to the point where that's why Packers fans want them to do it more often. It's like a mixed bag when you have success in free agency, because then they want you to, even the Eagles, maybe the most stunning part is the Eagles to get this type of production. Saquon's one thing.
Yeah.
But for Mekhi Becton at right guard and Zach Bond at linebacker on peanuts, that's the part that's really impressive.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, quick personal note about the game yesterday with the Packers and Eagles. You and I both from the Philly area. I actually was in Florida last week. I was going to stay down there, catch another few days of sunshine. But we had a lot of Green Bay friends coming to Philly. So we figured we better get back and host them and take them out to dinner. So I went out to dinner with them Saturday night. And there was a big Packer event down the street, and they were coming over for dinner. So first of all, again, only in Green Bay where fans recognize a guy worked there 12 years ago, not a GM, not a coach. And I was asked for selfies and autographs. I'm like, oh my God. Then I found myself at an alumni table and I had dinner with Antonio Freeman, Sean Jones, uh, James Jones, and Mike Daniels, and a couple others. So it was a unique time. And again, you know me, I'm still a Packer fan. I do love the Eagles as well. I know people are down on the Eagles. I just think they're going to play better. And I would watch out for the Eagles because that's one of those cliches. Maybe that was the best thing for them going forward.
It's a good point. It's a good point. What about some of this off the field stuff,
Yeah.
Andrew? You know, the one that jumps out to me the most is this Deshaun Watson re-tearing his Achilles on his own in Miami. Now, I don't know if it was when you were with him, Andrew, and you pushed him. Like, I don't know what happened that when you guys were both in Miami and he re-injures his Achilles. But, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, we were always told if you get hurt on your own, they can put you on NFI. They don't have to pay you. If you're at the team facility, if you're on team property, or, you know, that's different. So this is a really unique situation. He obviously hurt the Achilles in a game on the field in October. But we're 3 months, 4 months out from that now, and now he re-tears it on his own in Miami. I don't know if he was doing something approved by the organization or if it was part of his rehab, but I don't know, Andrew. I mean, you can talk about what the rules normally are. I would think the Browns are probably, as you would say on social media, at Andrew Brandt, there will be lawyers. I would think the Browns are probably trying to figure out what, if anything, they can get out of for him re-injuring this on his own.
A couple things at stake here. One, everyone knows the $92 million guaranteed. We talked about this way back early in the season where he had another sexual assault thing that came up. It was settled. No chance of the Browns extricating from the contract based on that. Now we talk about the injury part. Yes, a second injury to the Achilles, that's what we know. We know it happened away from the facility. We don't know much more than that. At issue to me is $92 million. Can they get out of that with some kind of NFI? And the bigger issue, Ross, is I think even if they can, will they? Because, you know, again, reputation matters. The Browns, this has been a disastrous situation, as everyone knows with Deshaun, but do they want to be that team? You know, do they want to be that team that will suck back money based on an injury? You mentioned it. Was he doing it on his own? Was he under trainer's orders? Was he in a rehab facility approved and even maybe directed by the Browns because they know he wasn't going to stay in Cleveland in the offseason? So what's going on there? I mean, a lot, and lawyers. But again, this is the biggest albatross contract in history because of the way he's played. They can't cut him because of the cap hit's extraordinary, over $100 million. They can't trade him, same effect. They have to pay him unless, as you talked about. So if I was the Browns, I would want to know a lot. The agent, I'm sure, is saying all the right things about how he injured it. Are they going to pursue it? We'll see. But yes, for people who don't know, NFI means if you're injured away from training, away from the team has an ability to keep you on the roster and pay you from zero to your established salary. It could be anywhere in between. We'll see.
Andrew, what's interesting to me about that is a bunch of different things. But in particular, you know, they could have made him stay in Cleveland. When I hurt my neck and my career ended, Washington made me stay in Virginia. They initially said I could rehab it in Pennsylvania. And I think word got out. The guys are like, oh my gosh, Tucker gets paid for the whole year and he gets to go home. And so they changed their mind and they made me go to Virginia. That would have been the first thing I would have done if I were the Browns. I think maybe there's reason why they don't want him in the facility, but you know he doesn't want to have to stay there. So that's one of the first way you could have kind of put the screws to him. Next thing, why can't the Cowboys do anything normal, Andrew? Why can't they ever do any contract proactively, normally? You know, now they're parting ways with Mike McCarthy, And because they waited this week till his contract expires at midnight tonight, they missed out on the chance to interview any of the guys on bye week. So they can't interview Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson or these guys. They just don't do things normally. I don't even know what question to ask you at this point.
I don't know why either. We've talked about this. I wrote about this. I've talked about it. CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, both negotiations went down to the wire needlessly because, as you know, once you're proactive with these contracts, you can save a little money. But if you wait till the end and you're just paying top of market, as they did, they went high market with Lamb and they went top of the market with Prescott on the day of the opener against the Browns. You couldn't wait any longer, and here they did it the same with McCarthy. You saw the statement, didn't seem to be about negotiations, but my sense is Mike had some leverage here. Whatever Jerry was talking about, Mike McCarthy, who I was part of hiring 18 years ago, geez, it's a long time, decided, no, I got better options. Maybe the Bears, maybe the Saints, maybe walk away, maybe do something else, but I don't know why, Ross. One thing with the player contract, someone said to me, well, Jerry likes to keep the money in his account as long as possible before transferring it over to a player's accounts. I guess that doesn't make too much sense to me for the amount of money it is. But anyway, McCarthy is a free agent. He went into it as a lame duck. I was at that Packers loss in the playoffs last year. I thought that maybe they'd fire him right after that. So I'm guessing Jerry Jones was talking about another year like that. Another year like he just had on the lame duck year. He said, I'm out. So I will say this, based on, again, how the Cowboys do things, Ross, I don't think missing out on Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson is an issue. I think they're going head coach experience, period. Whoever that is. I just think that's their MO.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting, the fact that it sounded like they were trending towards him coming back and now they're not makes me think, and I think you might have posted this on social media yesterday, that maybe he has a pretty good feeling that he's got a good chance somewhere else.
Yeah,
and a lot of people were saying Aaron Glenn for New Orleans before. Now you're hearing New Orleans maybe for Mike McCarthy. So we'll have to see how that plays out. What are your thoughts, Andrew, on the Mike Vrabel hire in New England?
Got some thoughts, and you just mentioned Aaron Glenn. I'm going to involve him here because let's put aside whether he's a good hire or not. That's not for me to decide. He's a former Patriot. People are going to be happy. He's a good coach. He was consulting actually with the Browns all year. But is anyone else raising the issue of what happened to the Rooney Rule here? Because Aaron Glenn decided, I'm not going there, because he knew the Crafts were going to hire Mike Vrabel, and nothing he could say or do or show up wearing was going to change that. So Aaron Glenn gave us all the clue about the New England Patriots because they had some minority interviews, but you know what they were. So I guess my point here, Ross, is that how does the Rooney Rule work if an owner, decision maker, decides, come hell or high water, there's nothing in God's green earth that's going to stop me from hiring the guy I really want, who is white. I mean, it seems to me a flaw that I don't know how you solve because, yes, they had a minority coach. Yes, they interviewed some minorities, but this seems pretty transparent to me, Ross, that the New England Patriots were not in serious compliance with the Rooney Rule here, but I don't know how you do it if they're dead set on Vrabel. Your thoughts?
I agree. I think my issue, and I talked about this on Monday's show, it's the second year in a row, Andrew, where it feels like the Patriots predetermined who they were going to hire. I don't think that's good process. Now, you might say, well, they were really familiar with both these guys and very comfortable with them since they were both Patriots players. But last year, they didn't even interview anybody. They just gave it to Mayo as the heir apparent. This year, the only other candidate, I guess, that they interviewed was Ben Johnson. They interviewed Pep Hamilton and Byron Leftwich, who no other team, and there's a bunch of openings, no other team is considering. So that tells you something about something. Then Vrabel and Ben Johnson, and they hired Vrabel. So it feels like in 2 years, they really interviewed one additional candidate that had a realistic chance at the job. I think that's poor process. I think if you go into it 2 years in a row, predetermining essentially who you're going to hire, that's not good. That's not a good process in my mind, because you're not really keeping an open mind, and you're not really giving yourself a chance to see what other people might say or do to impress you. So that's kind of what jumped out to me about it. I also want to chat with you, probably when we get a little bit closer to free agency. There's some contracts, whether it's Sam Darnold, Brock Purdy. There's some other things I want to dive into with you for sure, but I also want to save a little bit of meat on the bone for the next time we do this, whether that's February or March, before we start to see a little bit more movement on these contracts. Make sure all the Ross Tucker podcast listeners subscribe to and listen to the Business of Sports podcast. All the Business of Sports podcast listeners, hey, if you like fantasy football or betting or college football, or certainly if you just want a daily dose of NFL conversation, 26 minutes or less, check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Thank you so much, Andrew. I love doing this with you.
Yeah, we got to do it more often. This is always great stuff. Thanks, Ross.
Love those collabs with Andrew, just like I love telling you guys about free install, free upgrade, 0% free interest. They are coming out of the gate strong with a 3 for free sales event from my friends over at westshorehome.com/Ross. I've told you guys before, go to westshorehome.com/Ross. You can see how much better my showers and bathtub upstairs look after I got it redone from West Shore, or the entry doors. Even the entry doors just feel better, which is awesome. And they're giving you another ridiculous deal. Listen, the spring will be here before you know it. You're going to want nice windows or doors, or especially maybe a new shower. It's westshorehome.com/Ross, westshorehome.com/Ross for that 3 for free sales event. Playoff season is here, and the only thing better than game day predictions are the foods that come with them. Introducing Tums Fantasy Foodball Pool, brought to you by Tums, America's #1 antacid brand, and DraftKings. Each week leading up to the big game, turn football into foodball by building your best game day plate for a shot at winning a share of $40,000 in cash prizes. Inspired by game day bites and tailgate treats, join the Tums foodball action during this playoff season's most heartburn-inducing time. Visit DraftKings.com/foodball between January 6th and February 9th to enter for free and select your game day plate before the start of each playoff round. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See terms at DraftKings.com/Tums Foodball. When you feel the heat of the game, don't let heartburn keep you on the sidelines. Try Tums Chewy Bites with a tasty outer shell and soft center for fast relief of heartburn, acid indigestion, and upset stomach. Check out Tums Gummy Bites, featuring a soft and easy-to-chew format for fast relief of occasional heartburn, acid indigestion, sour stomach, and upset stomach. Both available at Amazon, Target, and other major retailers nationwide. And for more heartburn relief fun, be sure to follow Tums at Tums Official on Instagram and TikTok. All right, so I saw this on Monday night's game, this commercial multiple times, and the one guy couldn't say the word, so I'm going to see if I can say the word. Smirnoff Extraordinary. Head on over to SmirnoffDrops.com to check out upcoming drops and check out these Smirnoff Extraordinary items. Go quick, they won't last long. Here's what they are, by the way. They partner with Complex to let fans get their hands on amazing items handpicked by celebrities, including NFL legend, Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis, for the unbelievable price of $12.99, just like a bottle of Smirnoff. Check out these Smirnoff Extraordinary items at SmirnoffDrops.com. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer and may vary by state. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, the Rams dominate in the first half and they don't look back, beating the Minnesota Vikings 27-9.
Kind of disappointing in the sense that I thought, kind of like the Commanders and the Bucks, that we would get another competitive, good game. That was not the case. It actually wasn't even as close as this score would indicate. The Rams marched on their first drive for a touchdown as Matthew Stafford was on fire. I will say, when the game was still in doubt, there were some really interesting calls. You know, Matthew Stafford, they called it a fumble that was returned for a touchdown, but he kind of flicked it, to Puka Nacua. I thought that was the right call and a really heads-up play by Stafford. And the Rams had a roughing the punter where I thought they kind of threw the guy into the punter, which was a break for the Vikings. The Vikings, they weren't going to win the game anyway, but Grugier Hill, I've never seen a guy miss a punt block that was that close to blocking the punt. That was wild. The game really turned with 4 or 5 minutes left in the second quarter. Sam Darnold, who was under pressure all night, 6 sacks in the first half, 9 sacks overall. And he was under pressure, but he also holds the ball too long. I always say sacks on some level are a quarterback stat, and that was certainly the case with Darnold. Anyway, he fumbled. It was returned for a touchdown by Jared Verse, who was going 20 miles an hour at over 260 pounds. Impressive. So it was 17-3. And then the next drive, the Rams go for it on fourth down, before midfield. They don't get it. Darnold gets sacked. Rams get another touchdown with throws to Puka Nacua, Davis Allen. It was 24-3 at halftime, and the game was kind of over at that point. The Vikings did muster 1 touchdown in the second half, but that was it. They really got beat up front. I already talked about that. The crowd was awesome. It looked like it was 50-50 Vikings-Rams. I thought that was so cool on short notice like that. I also was thoroughly disappointed with the way in which the Vikings played in general, but in particular in the fourth quarter, slow to get to the line and running the ball. Hello, what are we doing? They kind of gave up. Jack, I know we got a couple news items, including the Cowboys, who love being in the news, but I love drinking some Labatt Blue Light with friends, family, living life to the power of we, always enjoying it responsibly, of course. It's delicious beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. You know who loves delicious beer? Football's funniest family duo, my guys and NFL champs, Jason and Travis Kelce. They've got an awesome next-level access to life inside the league in their hit show, New Heights. I'm guessing most of you already heard about it. If you haven't, you should definitely check it out. From their combined 21 years in the league, off-field shenanigans, they have incredible interviews like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bill Murray, Will Ferrell. It's unbelievable. Listen and watch New Heights wherever you get your podcast. But if you want to skip the ads, catch new episodes early and unlock access to exclusive episodes of the show, join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Cowboys and head coach Mike McCarthy are parting ways.
And it didn't take long for after that to come out for there to be reports that Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders had spoken. Jerry Jones is saying they never got to the part where they would negotiate, but Tom Pelissero is very tight with Mike McCarthy, and he had posted that there was a disagreement on the length of the contract. And as you just heard Andrew say, I think that there's a pretty good chance that McCarthy thinks that there's a pretty good chance he'll get a job with a real contract, a longer contract from some other team. And so the Cowboys can't interview Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn or any of the guys for the Lions or the Chiefs until after they're done playing now, which is really silly.
And the Eagles are losing to Kobe Dean for the season with a torn patella tendon.
That's tough. That is a tough injury for them because he's had a really nice year. I think he's been overshadowed a little bit by Zach Bond, but he's had a really nice year. Although the team they play, the Rams, Tyler Higbee got hurt last night. I don't know if he'll be available for Sunday's game either. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. We are exactly 1 month away from Valentine's Day. That means it's time to engage Maverick. Myfrontpagestory.com. Get her the greatest Valentine's Day gift she's ever received. Backofficescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy